What up, Space Fam? Goes in here from Anime Upper, and I'm back at it again to discuss the 7 Yonko, specifically ranking them from the weakest to strongest, so make sure to stay tuned for this one. If you do enjoy One Piece videos like this one and want to keep them coming, you know what to do, channel parking within and smash that like button. If we can get 5,000 likes on this one, I'll get started on another ranked video for One Piece. Just let me know who you want me to rank first, Admirals, Warlords, or some other group. Make this the video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications or you will miss future One Piece videos and updates. And now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. First, aka the weakest Yonko, is Buggy. I know, I will get a lot of hate for this in the comments, no doubt, but remember, this is not a popularity poll, but a list about strength, aka who would win in a one-on-one fight. And memes aside, Buggy has a lot of strengths, like charisma and being super lucky, but he just hasn't shown himself to be a strong character. He's arguably the only character on the list who doesn't deserve to be on the Yonko list at all, strength-wise. At first, when it was announced that Buggy became a Yonko off screen, it was fun to speculate about how he pulled it off. Did he awaken his fruit? Did he have some big clash with some Yonko or admirals? Was he hiding his true power the whole time? But soon enough, it was revealed that his title as Yonko was the result of misunderstandings and accidents. The poster and news made it seem like Buggy was the leader of the Cross Guild organization and that he got Crocodile and Mihawk, who has a bounty of 3.59 billion, not that far from Shanks's, to work under him. Not only that, Buggy was seen as confident enough to start putting bounties on the heads of Marines, an amazing idea by the way. However, when we catch up to them in the story, Mihawk and Crocodile are mad, threatening to take Buggy's life. Buggy looks pretty pathetic as he's beaten up, crying, not even trying to fight back. He even offers to lick the mud off their boots, if they'll spare his miserable life. Yikes, that's very far from the Yonko energy we've been exposed to so far. If Mihawk was seen as the Yonko of Cross Guild, this list would look different, but since Buggy holds the title, I had to place him here on the list. Ironically though, Buggy still got a higher bounty than Luffy, despite being way weaker at 3.189 billion berries. Next up, we have ex-Yonko Big Mom, who had an impressive bounty of 4.388 billion berries. She's obviously strong, and I don't need to prove that she's above Buggy, I hope. I mean, it took Awakened Law and Awakened Kid to beat her, and like Kaido, she's probably not even dead after all that. I still think it's kind of unfair that she had to face 2 opponents while Kaido only had to face 1, but obviously Gear 5 Luffy is stronger than Law and Kid. So since I don't have to prove she's stronger than Buggy, let's focus on proving she's weaker than the others. In my view, Kaido is stronger and he's actually gonna be the next one on this list, so that's enough for me to put Big Mom here. Yes, Big Mom and Kaido clashed for a while evenly and even split the heavens with their clashes, but it's my belief that Kaido would have won in an extended fight. He had a bigger bounty, which alone doesn't correlate to just who's stronger, but when combined with the fact that he was called the world's strongest creature and the fact that people used to say if it's a one-on-one fight, bet on Kaido, I think it all goes together to suggest that Kaido is the stronger one. It's also fitting for Luffy, our protagonist and the man who'd go on to become a new Yonko, to go after the stronger one too. So that works well with the story. Lastly, when Kaido thinks of people that could challenge him, he thinks of Odin, Whitebeard, Shanks, Goldie Roger, and Rox D. Zebek, but tellingly, he doesn't think of Big Mom, suggesting that he's confident he could beat her. For these reasons, I'm putting Big Mom here. She definitely deserves respect, and her Soul Fruit can be tricky, especially if you have fear. However, so many upper tier characters, even non-Yonkos like Kid, Law, and Jinbei don't fear her, so it's definitely not enough to put her higher on this list that's made up of the cream of the crop. Next is, as I mentioned, Kaido, also known as the world's strongest creature. Remember when I said bounties aren't all about who's stronger? Well, I'm bringing that into play here. Out of all the living Yonko after Whitebeard's death, Kaido had the highest bounty at 4.6111 billion berries, but in my view, this doesn't translate to him being the strongest. And you don't have to look far for the bounty doesn't equal power evidence, since as I mentioned, Buggy has a higher bounty than Luffy, and he's definitely not stronger. But how could I put the guy called the strongest creature in the world so low? He has a mythical zone fruit that lets him turn into a giant azure dragon, and his hybrid form is no less impressive. As Zoro mentioned, he's like a natural disaster that can summon tornadoes, slices of wind that cut like swords, lightning, and most commonly flames. He can even surround his dragon body in flames so that those who don't have the advanced ability to emit haki can't even attack him without burning themselves themselves or straight up melting. He even felt like he could take old Whitebeard's life before Shanks made him turn around. However, he lost to Gear 5 Luffy. Kaido has been presented as one of the most invincible characters, one that couldn't even take his own life no matter how hard he tried. But at the same time, he definitely wasn't presented as the most unbeatable character. In fact, we were told that he lost 7 times before he ever fought Luffy. As mentioned, it's also telling that Shanks could make him turn around and abandon his plan to take Whitebeard's life. Later, when he thinks of the characters that could challenge him, Shanks and Whitebeard are present, suggesting that he's not as confident in his ability to beat them as he is in his ability to beat Big Mom. So then, why is his bounty bigger than Shanks's? Well, I think it's because he's more unpredictable and not as prone to remaining low-key. Shanks, for his part, unless he can't avoid it, always tries to stop the fighting. He doesn't feel the need to show off or prove himself. Think about how he didn't even beat up the petty bandit that was giving one of the strongest pirates in the world a tough time. He also stopped Kaido, the Paramount War, tried to stop Whitebeard from going after Blackbeard, and most recently stopped Green Bull. He's more like a peacekeeper and even acts as a go-between sometimes between the world government and the pirate world, as we saw when he went to the 5 elders to warn them about a certain pirate. The next one on this list is Luffy, and it's pretty straightforward why I put him above Kaido. He beat him in a one-on-one fight. I will acknowledge that Kaido did take damage from many before his Luffy fight, like from Yamato, Zoro, and the Red Scabbards. But with Kaido's level of durability, I don't think that was that big of a deal to him. He could still pull out his A game by the time his one-on-one fight with Luffy started. Yet Luffy still bested Kaido. And it wasn't just Gear 5, aka his own Mythical Zone awakening. Oda, through Kaido, made it clear that Devil Fruit powers alone aren't enough to become Pirate King. Haki is the key, so much so that many of the strongest characters in the series, like Shanks and the Pirate King Goldie Roger, didn't even have Devil Fruit powers. It was because Luffy learned the advanced technique of emitting his Conqueror's Haki that he was able to punch and finish off Kaido, even without making contact with his flaming dragon form. So if Luffy is so high up on this list, why is his bounty only 3 billion berries, lower than Buggy's and tied with Laws and Kids, despite the fact that they had to team up to beat a weaker Yonko? Well, it's pretty obvious. The government doesn't want to put too much focus on Luffy, the new era Joy Boy and the living embodiment of the sun god Nika, the mythical figure that gives hope and strength to the oppressed of the world. Obviously, the world government, which thrives on oppressing others, fears this more than anything, to the point where they were more than willing to risk upsetting Kaido if it meant that they could thwart even the possibility of the sun god returning. This was further emphasized when the elders were angry about Luffy's Gear 5 form getting printed on his wanted poster. They were hoping to keep it under wraps. Not increasing his bounty at all would raise just as much suspicion after what Luffy did, so they tried to spin it like it was Luffy, Kid, and Law who all played an equal part in taking down the combined forces of Big Mom and Kaido. However, I think we can all agree that in reality, Luffy deserves a higher bounty than Law and Kid, and in my view, after defeating Kaido and becoming the new sun god, I feel like his bounty should be even higher than Kaido's was, if the Marines were being honest about his threat level to them. So with Luffy being so impressive lately, how could I put him below Blackbeard, who's next on this list? Well, let's talk about it. Blackbeard has definitely been a dude to watch over the course of the series. While Luffy failed to get Ace out of Marineford alive, Blackbeard succeeded in taking out Whitebeard and taking his fruit, which is considered to be the strongest paramecia. Now, it must be noted that Whitebeard was old, sick, and already heavily injured, but it's still impressive what Blackbeard accomplished compared to Luffy at Marineford. He even got to add a number of dangerous and powerful impel down prisoners to his crew. While Luffy was training, he beat Marco and his forces and got proclaimed a Yonko, replacing Whitebeard and gaining a bounty of 2.2476 billion berries. The reason I'm comparing Blackbeard to Luffy is because Blackbeard is being set up as Luffy's major antagonist. Luffy, the sun god who wants freedom for all, facing off against a more Machiavellian Dark Fruit using Blackbeard, sun versus darkness. There's no doubt that these two will eventually clash, but the really interesting part here is that we've been following Blackbeard's rise in the pirate world just like we've been following Luffy's. We've sort of seen Blackbeard start from the bottom like Luffy and make it all this way. And whereas Luffy tends to not overthink things, Blackbeard is a master planner with a scary amount of patience. He waited so long to get the Dark Fruit, and all the while he stayed in Whitebeard's shadow. Even though he was strong enough to be a commander, even before he ate the fruit said to be the most dangerous fruit power in the history of all Devil Fruit powers, he purposely refused the position, not wanting to attract attention to himself. Most recently in the manga, we saw him go after former warlord Boa Hancock's especially tricky Devil Fruit. In the process, process, his crew was turned to stone, but he managed to get his hand on Boa, and as we know, if Blackbeard is touching you, you can't use your Devil Fruit's powers. So Blackbeard could have finished off Boa, who has an impressive bounty of 1.659 billion and who is known as the Pirate Empress. But it wasn't so simple. If he did, Boa said that he wouldn't be able to restore his crew members, even if he took her fruit powers. Also, she says it is her beauty that makes her power so effective, so it wouldn't be as effective if Blackbeard just gave it to anybody. Still, Blackbeard knew that if he let her go, he'd be turned to stone himself, so he was ready to finish her. The only reason he didn't was because the Dark Knight and right hand of Goldie Roger Rayleigh showed up and ensured that if he let Boa go, he'd guarantee the return of his crew. At first, you might think that Blackbeard agreed because he feared that he had no shot against Rayleigh, but in truth, he probably wanted his crew back. Sure, Rayleigh's legendary status may have played a factor, but Rayleigh says himself that at his age, he couldn't have possibly won in a head-to-head fight against Blackbeard. Thus, even old era legends are now praising Blackbeard's power. Still, you might think that things finally didn't go Blackbeard's way. He didn't get what he wanted when he went after Boa. He finally came up empty-handed for once. But that's not what happened. He ended up kidnapping Marine hero Kobe, who was also at the fight, and before all of this, he already had a bounty of 3.996 billion, very close to Shanks' own bounty. So although Luffy beat Kaido, I think Blackbeard still deserves to be viewed as stronger. Beyond just looking at how stories work and the fact that Luffy has yet to face Blackbeard while he's already beaten Kaido, we should keep in mind that Blackbeard has been ahead of Luffy throughout the story. He's not stagnating, but getting stronger all the time, just like Luffy. The legendary guy who trained Luffy during the time skip even admitted that he couldn't beat Blackbeard. Luffy will eventually fight Blackbeard and win. There's no doubt about that, but he hasn't yet. So we can only assume that Blackbeard is still ahead and thus it will still be an interesting fight when they face off against each other. However, I still can't put Blackbeard above the current Yonko with the highest bounty, Shanks. Shanks' bounty is 4.0489 billion berries, the highest of all the current Yonko. But as I mentioned, it would probably be even higher if he wasn't so low-key and didn't actively work to keep the peace whenever possible. I do think that Blackbeard will eventually surpass Shanks and maybe even beat him in a fight. That is the way the story is progressing if you ask me, especially with Shanks' warning about him to Whitebeard and the fact that he got his scars from Blackbeard before Blackbeard even got fruit powers. However, after what we've seen from Shanks, we just can't put Blackbeard above him yet. At Marineford, Shanks even asked Blackbeard if he wanted to challenge him, and Blackbeard pretty much said not yet, knowing he'd lose if he did. Shanks did many notable things that speak to his power, even though we haven't actually seen him in a serious fight. And yes, I'm talking about impressing Whitebeard with his legendary duel with Mihawk, splitting the heavens while clashing with Whitebeard, getting Kaido to turn around at Marineford, stopping the war because no pirates or marines wanted to mess with him, effortlessly stopping Sakazuki's attack with his sword, and most recently scaring Admiral Greenbull away by just releasing some haki. Because of all this, I just can't bring myself to put Blackbeard above Shanks, even though I think the story will require Blackbeard surpassing Shanks eventually. Lastly, I have Prime Whitebeard, once called the strongest man in the world and the one closest to One Piece. In my opinion, putting Prime Whitebeard here is pretty straightforward. Not only was his bounty the biggest at 5.046 billion berries, he was also presented as being the equal of Roger the Pirate King, a position above that of Yonko obviously. After his rival Roger's death, there is little doubt that Whitebeard could have gone on to find the One Piece and become the next Pirate King. However, his focus was on his family, aka his crew, and not on that title. Even though he was old and sick, Blackbeard still needed to use Ace as a pawn in order to orchestrate the Legend's defeat. Yes, Blackbeard has the Dark fruit and Whitebeard's Tremor fruit, while Whitebeard only had the Tremor fruit. But as Kaido pointed out, fruit powers are way less important than haki, and we saw how Prime Whitebeard's impressive Conqueror's haki clashed equally with that of Roger's. Notably, I do think that this era's best fighters have the potential to surpass Prime Whitebeard, but I just don't think they're there yet. Now, channel the Pirate King with it and smash that like button if you enjoyed this video. If we can get 5,000 likes on this one, we'll get started on another ranked video for One Piece. Just let me know who you want us to rank first, Admirals, Warlords, or some other group. If you don't agree with this list, that's totally cool. Let me know why in the comments. Subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already, or you will miss future One Piece videos and updates. Right Buggy is clearly the strongest in the chat if you watched all the way to this point, and also to confuse those who haven't. While you wait for for the next video to drop, feel free to check out my large and growing One Piece playlist that includes videos on all the admirals, a 1-hour video on Shanks, and much more. Link to that is in the description. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.